Should be online. We should have audio. And folks, welcome to Build or Buy. If we have our audio working, fantastic. I want to thank everybody last week for helping us to know we had a problem, helping us to solve it. Nick Streeter's not here, but if George needs to call, you can always give Robert a call and let us know what's going on. And thank you, Horst, for also emailing us. For those that are joining us for the first time, this is Build or Buy. We talk about building and buying and upgrading computers. We've got some things to talk about from last week that we didn't get to because we had an audio problem. I think we have that problem solved. And because of that little problem, I used that video, and I'm going to show you a test today of the AMD Radeon WX 7100. It's a workstation class video card. And it's not more of a solution. It's just an FYI to let you know what I think of the card. Some of the things it does is great. Some of the things that I wanted it to do are not so great. But I'll tell you about it as we get a little further along. Joe's got some information he's going to share. He was working with Nick Streeter's computer yesterday. And as much as I love that computer, I'm itching and eager to hear what Joe has to say. Joe? You need to turn your mic on. Yeah. Turn it on and put it on right there. I thought you were good to go. Now the new mics, when we start using them, are going to be a little easier for you to use when we meet. And remind everybody, we're not going to be here next week. We're going to have off for Thanksgiving, so I'll say happy Thanksgiving now. But we will be back in 2 weeks. I'll try to do an upload. Joe?
Okay, you all know that George has that is it Asus Zen computer?
Asus Zen.
And it's a really good computer. And so he did a backup, and then he wanted to make sure that his backup that he made would be transferable back to his machine. And so as you know, I told him the best way to do that would be make sure that he used images instead of trying to clone the disk. Because if you clone the disk, you got to clone back. Because I don't know of an M.2 drive that'll fit into a little metal computer case or hard drive case. So anyway, so he made the image. Now he wanted to go back and check to find out if it would boot from that image and restore the drive. So the first thing we did was go into the BIOS and change the first boot device to the USB stick that he put the image on, not the image, but the restore disk on. So we did that, and we went through it once and checked it, and everything worked good. I said, okay, now show me what we just did again. So he went through and turned on, he put the disk back in there, the stick, turned on the machine, and it booted into Windows. Not the way we had set the BIOS, but it booted into Windows. So I said, okay, let's go back into the BIOS and see what happened. We went back into the BIOS and found out that the first boot device was now the hard drive, or the M.2 drive. So I said, okay, change it back the way we had it. And I watched him as he did everything, and I said, okay, now save and exit. So he saved and exit, and then everything went smooth. So I said, now do it again. I'm going to see what happened to that hard drive. So he turned the machine off and then turned it back on, and it booted up into Windows. It would not keep the change we made. Even though we said save, change, and exit, it would not keep that thing. So I kept looking around in there, and I found a thing that said, as we getting ready to leave, you know, to say change and exit and get out of there, there was a message came up that said that the normal boot drive would be restored automatically. Well, you know, in the past, we had a situation where if you hit for instance, the F8 key when you were booting up, and that was a one-time only boot. It booted up that one time on that drive, and then the next time it went back. And apparently that's the way this BIOS is set up. It only boots one time on the drive you change it to, and the next time you boot up, even though you said save changes and exit, it reverts back to the primary drive.
Interesting.
So I don't like that feature. You know,
Yeah.
I would much rather have had the F8 and the F12, but that wasn't an option.
Understandable.
So anyway, now he's happy. He knows how to make an image of his disk, and he knows how to restore the image if he needs it.
Hold on a second. Let's get a mic over there on Robert so everybody can hear him. Folks, be sure and raise your hand so we can get a mic on you so everybody online can hear you.
I missed the point. If you made it, did you ever find a way to make it boot to USB?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And what was that way?
Well, just by going into the BIOS and rearranging the boot options.
I thought that you booted and found that you were back to the M.2 every time you did that.
You got to listen carefully. You're right, but what happened was we changed the boot options to boot in the boot up with the USB stick. Okay. So we said save change and exit. So we saved the change and it rebooted back into the USB stick. Then the next time when we got done with that, checked everything out, I said go back and try it again. So we went back and turned the machine off and then turned it back on to boot up into that stick again. And the second time that it booted up from scratch, it booted up back into Windows.
Okay. So you could go to the CMOS and say boot to the USB and save your exits, save your changes and exit and boot to the USB. You found that
Yes.
did work. Okay.
But the next time you boot it up,
Yeah, well, I understand
it
that.
automatically went to the
You could only do it
M.2.
once. Well, you had better luck with that then than I did with the Dell.
This wasn't a Dell.
Well, you know, I told
This
the
is
story
Asus.
of the
Asus
machine
Zen.
I bought a year ago that would not boot to USB. It was quite a different sequence, different set of error messages and so on. But at least your story ends properly or positively that you were able to boot to the USB.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we were.
So, good to know. Okay. Do y'all know that the browser has upgraded again? FireFox? Has anybody seen the new FireFox? FireFox Quantum? Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Let's get a mic over there so we can hear what you're saying. We want to get the feedback, otherwise folks don't hear you. The mics are working this week. I got that all squared away.
I had Joel here trying to get it back to where I could recognize everything. Mine changed a lot.
You made it made more changes than what you wanted? Yes, Joe?
Could you show my machine here?
Yes, number one.
The changes we trying to make on his machine with the new FireFox was to make it function in some cases more like the old FireFox, in that if I hit the history button here, I can say restore previous session. We did not have, we could not find that option in the new FireFox. So that's one of the things that we couldn't do. And when it said show all history, we could not get something like this that showed all the history. You have to jump through hoops to get the history. So it's a matter of, I haven't played with it enough just today with Ed, but so far, if that's what it's going to be, I'm not too crazy about it. Because I like those two features, you know, about show all history and at the same time, you know, boot up into my last time I had this thing turned on.
Yeah. Well, I just got it on a couple of machines last night, and I found it by accident because I'm always checking to see what's upgrading, and that upgraded, and then Windows decided to upgrade, and I thought I was getting the new build 1709 on a machine, but instead I was getting, let's go over to camera 2. Thank you. Not on both screens. On two machines, I thought I was getting build 1709. Let's leave a backup shot. Instead, I was getting build 1703 upgrading on two machines, which was a little bit annoying. Here, Joe's got a 8-year-old laptop, and he's got 1709. We're already seeing information. I'll share with you some links today. There, Microsoft and a few other people are talking about the next build coming down the pike, and we're not all comfortable in 1709. And just prior to that, this browser was upgrading. So the reason I mentioned the browser, because it's upgrading, I haven't had a chance to play with it. The interface is a little bit different. It's now called FireFox Quantum. It's they claim a quantum leap. You know, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the new 64-bit version. So now they've gone 64-bit, but they've gone with this new engine. And they've made quite a few changes with this new engine. Hopefully it's going to run faster, it's going to run smarter, it's multi-threaded. So we're going to see. But like Joe said, some of the little changes where they've made some quirks. Another thing that people are having an issue with is the way it separates and brings together your search versus your URL when you're looking. On my machine, it kept it separate. But I've seen some people complaining about they've combined the two and they didn't like that. But I want to take you back one step further, because remember I was telling you guys about a FireFox scam, and I was asking you about that screen if you'd seen it. Well, I've got it on a machine. Let's go to input number 3, computer number 3. And I'm going to bring this up and show you what this looks like. Let's go to computer number 3. There we go. Remember, when you're going from the, this is for the person running the switch, when you're going from the preview to the program, put whatever we're going to do up on preview, then hit the space bar to bring it to program. Okay, this is the screen you would see. Critical FireFox update, download now. The other thing that will occur is another dialog box will pop up, probably in gray, that'll say something about there's a whatever named file.js, which is a JavaScript file. Do not do either one of those things.
No voice.
Audio's what?
Your audio's out.
My audio's out? Is that any better? Okay. It sounded like it was popping a little bit a while ago. So we're upgrading these mics. These two that Joe and I are using will be upgraded when we come back in 2 weeks. Right now we're making it work. So anyway, this critical FireFox update, if you see that screen, does that look official to you guys?
Yeah.
That looks official to me. I have come across that in the last couple of years, probably 3 times. Yes, Ed?
Did you try to update?
No, I did not, because I saw it and I thought, well, that's odd.
Well, I fall into all the categories of trying to do the bad thing. I tried to update, and Malwarebytes blocked me.
Interesting.
So
That's good.
I went to Malwarebytes, and I said, you're preventing me from upgrading Firefox. And as nice as they could, they came back and said, well, that is a bad thing. It's a virus.
Yep.
Said, you don't want that. And I said, well, thank you so much for getting me out of trouble.
Well, again, what I did is I saved this screen. I didn't save the screen of the .js file. But whenever I have come across this, it's been at inopportune times. And I'm thinking, okay, am I in front of the computer, or did this happen while I stepped away from the computer? And did it occur with something I was looking at on the internet from a particular website I went to, or did this occur from some email I had been looking at? Every time that's occurred, it's always left me confused. So whenever I've seen this screen, I just sat there and looked at it for a minute, and I thought, well, that's strange. So then I would go to the browser, and I'm going to bring the browser back up, and I would go and I would bring the Alt key, and I'd do the help, and I'd do the about. And if it checked and told me it was up to date, then I would say, something rotten in Denmark. And again, this is the version 57 64-bit FireFox up to date. So if this says it's up to date, and I've got a screen like this that says a critical FireFox update, I just close it. But I came real close because it looks real official. So I can see why you did. And that's another reason to have, as you said, Malwarebytes, the paid version. Keeps you safe. But every time I've seen it, it left me bewildered because it really looked official. I mean, I was really close to clicking on it, and I'm like, no, wait a minute. So now because I've seen it before, that's why I captured the screen on it, because I wanted to share it with you guys. So if you see something like this, do not click on it. That is a scam. And don't go for it. I just had to share that with you. I've got several talking points I want to get through. That was one of them. No. I'm going to start at the bottom of the list. We've got about 40 items on here we're going to go through. I'll try to go through them real quickly. I've been talking to you about workstation graphics cards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a little test, and I'm going to show you. This is a AMD graphics card. This graphics card is the AMD WX 7100. It's a workstation card. And my question is always, you know, we're going to build a machine. What video card do we put in? Right now, I like the card, but I couldn't recommend the card. If you're going to buy a workstation card, I'd buy the one below it. But let me show you what I'm talking about, because I'm also going to show you GPU acceleration. That's been a big deal with Magix Vegas Video in the old versions. You always had to go in and configure it based on the codec you used when you rendered a file. That's no longer the case. Now the driver, as you update and as you keep it current, it's automatically part of the application, and that is in a different sheet, and that property sheet I'll show you automatically comes up and is automatically configured. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the screen. I'm going to bring up Vegas, and I used the video we had from last week that didn't have audio to help me work through this. And when I get through, I'm going to show you a couple of changes I made on our YouTube page that I hope it'll make it easier to navigate. I'm going to bring up Vegas Pro 15, and it's going to load the file that I worked on from last week. And the only difference is there's a extra audio track that I use to bump it up. Whenever I've got audio and I'm trying to do multi-cameras, I line up the audio first to get my audio in sync, and that's what you see here. But I'm going to go to Options, I'm going to go to Preferences, and I'm going to go to Video. Now I'm going to zoom in on this, and it says GPU acceleration of video processing, and that is enabled. Let me do one other thing here that might make this a little bit easier to see while I'm talking. I'm going to do this. Yeah. Okay. GPU acceleration of video processing, AMD or off. There's nothing to configure anymore about turning on GPU acceleration. GPU acceleration is there when you install the driver. So let me zoom back out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to render this file. And as I render it, in fact, let me back up. Before I start the rendering process, this is something I like about the new version of Windows, Build 1709. I'm going to bring up the Task Manager where I can see kind of what's going on. I'll put this down just a little bit. I'm going to watch the GPU, and then up here I'm going to watch the CPU. My question is always, who's doing the rendering? Now after we get through with this test, you're going to go, well, that kind of sucks. Then I'm going to go run Cinebench and show you what Cinebench says. Based on what Cinebench says, great card, but based on what this does, before I run this test, what you're going to find is the CPU is doing most of the rendering. But as we render this file, whether we do the whole thing or not, you're going to see two types of video. Now, I'm going to use the Magix AVC MP4. I'm going Internet HD 1080, 29.97, because that is about what we use to stream. We are streaming at 1080p 30. So I'm going to call this number 4, and that is the 4th edit. Now, as we render this, okay, watch the CPU usage go up. I'll bring the screen up. Now, the screen you're seeing is the preview, and I can't move this window up where it shows a percentage. It says it's going to take 5 minutes. It's going to take longer than that. But the preview is where you benefit right now from one of these cards. But let's take a look at what's going on with the CPU. It'll jump anywhere from 3% up to about 11%. It never gets over 14%. But if you watch the CPU, we'll hit around tops of 95%. Now this is a Ryzen, top-of-the-line Ryzen, which is the, I believe, the 1950. So I've got, it says 16 cores. It's actually 16 threads, 8 cores. My GPU will jump up when this screen goes to just a static image. As long as there's motion there, it'll drop way down, but right now we're averaging about 4%, which is pretty good. The reason I'm showing you this is if anybody's interested in buying one of these cards, if you're serious about buying this card, first of all, if you have one of the cards, great. The driver's got to mature. If you're thinking about buying one of these cards, I'd back off that a little bit because, again, the driver needs to mature. As the driver comes out to do more things, this is one thing that they need to enhance. Now, there's two types of rendering. The kind of rendering you're seeing, I'm rendering live video. The other kind of rendering is if you're doing rendering on well, like your animation rendering or your 3D animation or rendering like CAD rendering. With that, this card is phenomenal with the streaming processors. I think it's got over 4,000 streaming processors, and it beats the britches off anything else. But for doing this kind of rendering, and this is the only thing I'm interested in Vegas video, I don't get the performance I'd like. And if you notice the time, it says it's going to take 16 minutes. And as we watch the cores at 16 minutes, we're looking at 87 to 94% for the CPU usage. And the point of this is, if you're going to build a computer and you're going to render video, in my opinion, build a Threadripper, because we'd go from 16 threads to 32 threads. And if the CPU is doing all the rendering, to me right here, proof's in the pudding. I'm always looking for tests. I'm looking for some kind of comparison. And I see people talk, but I don't see results. I want results. Now, if I were to put this on an SSD, would that make it any faster? This is rendering. This is not about what it's taken to copy the file. Because I could bring up that other program we like to use that we can render with, but it's actually for cutting video. It's like copying a file. It's pretty quick. But as you can see here, because we're having to render this, and this is an audio track with a video track, and all I have done is put another audio track in there to increase the volume. But I used that video from what we did last week to do several things. One, test this video card. Two, to also optimize what we were doing on YouTube. And three, because the video was messed up, I pulled the original down, but I put some notes up. Critical piece of audio equipment. Our audio is set up for set and forget, and I forgot we needed that component. So we've got audio now, and I can see it. So I hope this will give you some idea of kind of what's going on. There's no need to render this, but just as you're looking at video, if you see the preview, if I had done some heavy graphics on there, again, the preview would be in real time. But when I'm using something like NewBlueFX, it has no effect on rendering in NewBlueFX. That rendering is done from the CPU. It has nothing to do with the GPU. So I'm going to let this get just a little bit further. It says it's going to take 16 minutes. 3.6%. When we get to some more just video, when it goes away from actual motion, because there's a lot of information there it has to process, we'll drop down to 3%. Now, when I upgraded the driver the last time, from the first time I installed it, I was at a flat 2% no matter what. And that jumped to 9.9%. But when I upgraded the driver, I was getting around 3 to 4%, and I would have some peaks when we were not looking at like a static image like that, where it would jump to 14%. Right now it's saying 10.6. And it's saying it's going to take 17 minutes to render. I'm not going to let it finish rendering. I just want to show you, because we have Windows Build 1709, we can now monitor what the GPU is doing. And I'm not aware of any way in the past to monitor the video as we can monitor the CPU. And yes, there's a tool we could install with our CPU usage, but it is reliant upon another program. I've never used it. I was afraid it would break. But here we're using the task manager. We're monitoring the GPU. If I need to zoom in on that, hopefully everybody can see that. .7%. It's going to take 15, 16 minutes. The file is only like 45 minutes. But it'll jump up to, I've had it as high as, like I said, 14%. But getting everything in the screen where you can see what's going on. That's something else we're using is picture-in-picture with our switch. We've never done just one picture-in-picture. And the CPU usage is on the other screen. So let me zoom back out, because we got this computer set up for dual monitors. Now we should see that, okay, now it's saying 10% on the GPU. As long as we're showing animation. That was Melanie's little story about the German Shepherd. I'll zoom back out. Okay, so we can see CPU usage, 8.2. Excuse me, GPU at 8.5. CPU, we're running all 16 threads. And we're averaging about 90%. It's dropping down some. And it kicks from CPU, and that's when the GPU is kicking in, which is kind of interesting, I think. 8.5%. So, you know, right now I don't think the card justifies the cost. The specs are amazing, but this is the kind of rendering I'm interested in. And this is about as simple as a test as I can show. Y'all find that interesting? Okay, I'm going to go back to just that computer, which would be number 3. Great. Okay, that takes me off the screen. Oh, somebody changed it. Leave that alone. Okay, there we go. Good. Now we can change it. Okay, I'm going to finish this later. So I'm going to kick that loose, and I'm going to cancel that. I just wanted to show you guys that. Do y'all think that was interesting or not? Now I'm going to bring up another program called Cinebench. Y'all ever heard of Cinebench? It's really interesting downloading because it would not run from a directory. I had to run it literally from the root of a drive because it had such a long file name. Now this is Cinebench, and this is a version I downloaded 11.12. Today's 11.15. So I'm going to run this Cinebench Windows version 64-bit. Now this is an interesting test. If you do this kind of rendering, and I can do 2 things. We're going to use OpenGL. And let's do the CPU. Let's go to OpenGL for the GPU. And we're going to run the GPU now. So it's going to run its test. It's going to prepare the project. Down at the bottom it says performing OpenGL test. Press escape to cancel. So let's put that back on MultiView at the bottom. There. Okay. Now if you notice this kind of rendering, this is architectural rendering, 3D rendering. And we're performing an OpenGL test, running a benchmark. It doesn't take that long. We'll let it finish. I think you're going to find the score to be amazing. And it's going to compare it to some other cards. It's going to compare it to a Quadro K4000, a Quadro 4000, and if you notice over here on the left-hand side at the key, also a GeForce GTX 460, an ATI Radeon 5770, an NVIDIA GeForce GT, let's see, GT 650, a GT 620, and an Intel HD Graphics 400. And that'll bring me up to another point about what Intel and AMD are doing, which we haven't seen in a long time. Now, if you notice here on the left-hand side, bring this up. I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this again. Let's go to this right here. Now, that's our card that we just ran. And our system says 8 cores, 16 threads, AMD Ryzen 7 1700. And that AMD Radeon, which is an AMD Radeon Pro WX 7100 using OpenGL, and it shows here Windows, it says Windows 8. Anyway, Windows 10 64-bit, and this is the demo version of Cinebench. But if you notice the comparison of the score with all of our cores, 113.83 versus 67.71. So in this kind of rendering for this test, we double the performance of what a Quadro K4000M would do. For that, that's pretty amazing. Now, if we were to, let me zoom back out because I'm going to run the other test. And just as a comparison, we compared our GPU, and it shows here our Open GPU test, 113.83 FPS. Up here at the top, if you'll notice, we've run the first test. Let's run the second test for the CPU. I'll zoom back out, and we'll see, let it go. It doesn't take that long. And then again on the left-hand side, it'll compare our score to some other machines. You know, we're always looking for a system that we consider to be bang for the buck. And I still think this is bang for the buck. The CPU is the right place to be. I think the CPU going above this is the way to go. And I think probably the video card below this. This is a 7100. I think for most people, the 5100 for a workstation card will do the job. Okay, it's finished. Let's go back over here. Now, I did the CPU. It said 1591. How does that compare? Okay. Our system with an AMD Ryzen, I'm sorry, is a 1800. I said 1950. Okay, this is a Ryzen 7 1800. Our score is 1591, comparing to an Intel Xenon X5650. That's interesting. So our score is still better. So you look at bang for the buck, we get just a tad bit better on the CPU, and we double our score as far as the GPU. So one score that I used that's realistic was the actual rendering of real video, and that left me kind of scratching my head. Whereas this at the Cinebench kind of makes me go, that's pretty neat, but I don't do that kind of rendering. But if I did, I'm set for it. So I wanted to share that with you. So, interesting? Now you can download Cinebench. It's a free download. I had a link up on BuilderBuy to it, but I'm just going to go do a search for it. Cinebench from Maxon, and you do a search for Cinebench. You want to download it from them and not somebody else. Just scroll down, download Cinebench for Windows or Cinebench for Mac. And when you go to unzip it, if it gives you grief about where you're trying to unzip it, the reason it's giving you grief is because it's got some long file names it's working with. So what I had to do was I put it in the root of a drive, and I unzipped it. I created a folder for it, unzipped it, and then just ran the executable within that. It doesn't actually create an install screen or an install where it's like where they add remove programs. But there it is. You can run it. It's free. Test your video, test your CPU, and see what you got. So, any questions about that? Yes, Joe?
Have you tried just renaming that file something shorter and running it?
Well, the problem is the file's in that directory because the Cinebench directory is pretty short. I created the Cinebench, and then it has a folder it calls Cinebench R 15.038. And trying to unzip it, the files that were in it, that are inside of that, it may have something in these, like the ranking scores, because the ranking scores I can see exceed 256 characters. And I think that's where the issue came up. So as far as renaming them, they've got those files in the CB ranking that are pretty long. I didn't go in and try to count them. I didn't try to count the characters. And in the modules, I don't see any problem in the modules. I think it's in the scores. Plugins, I don't see any problem with the plugins. Those are short. Resources, those are pretty straightforward. I think it was in the CB ranking. Because these scores are so long, that's why I had to put it in the root. So going in and try to rename them, I'm sure it's possible. Because I usually have stuff several folders deep. And I was really surprised at that. And that reminds me, there was something with Bill 1709 that was supposed to remove that problem with 256 characters for file names. But obviously it doesn't apply here. So that's the score. That's the video card, that's the score, and that's how you set up the rendering for using your video card. It automatically happens if you're using Vegas Video. Does anybody use Vegas Video? Nobody here use Vegas Video? I love it. Easy program to use. I've got some plugins that work only in Vegas that don't work in DaVinci Resolve, so that's why I showed Vegas Video, because that's the one I use the most. I've been using Vegas Video since day one when it started from a long time ago. Okay, now, next question that popped up. Let's go over to, give me camera number 2. Okay. Next thing to come up, I want to talk to you about some talking points from last week. Is Andrew here? Andrew, last week, because I was working with audio, I didn't get to hear the questions, so I heard the video back, and I'm going to show you all some stuff on YouTube, what I did because of that. But I heard your question. You were asking about Windows Build 1709, and you had some failed installs, and I didn't get a chance to comment on that, but I got some questions before I comment on it. Your computer you're talking about, was that with the new computer?
No, that was the old computer back from 2010.
An old computer. Okay, so an old computer that was that would have been a computer that probably had Windows Vista on it?
No, it came with Windows 7 on it.
Came with Windows 7 and it's been upgraded along the path?
Right.
Okay.
That's the same one I had that hard drive, power supply problem with.
Oh, that's the one, the power supply. Oh. Yeah. We've had a lot of views looking at that power supply we upgraded. I want to thank you for that. What Joe said last week was entirely true. I've had the same problem. If you've got a computer that Microsoft doesn't want to update, there's 3 drivers that are going to be a problem. It's the network, number 1. It's probably the audio, number 2. And number 3, it's the video. So if it's hanging on that, they're doing you a favor, because in the past, they would upgrade those, and then all of a sudden you couldn't get online, and you had to downgrade that driver if you knew what to do. If it's not one of those issues, which you can wait on, the other issue, it could be something with the data store. If the data store is corrupted, I'm going to show you a link where you can go to that talks about some of that kind of stuff. We've talked about the data store before, about probably a year ago. We might need to revisit that issue. That's why I've always said when you do the install of Windows, do 2 things. Make sure you have the USB, which is the easiest, but also make sure you have the image, the ISO, because to correct the data store, you used to have to pull that from the ISO. But I'll show you a link up here on Build or Buy. Let's go over to computer number 3. Okay, computer number 3, we're going to go to the links, and I've got one up here on 1709 if it fails. Let me find it. 1709. Okay, it's talking point number 15. This is Win Tips. Windows tips and how to fix. Let me do this again right quick. I'm going to, okay, right here. wintips.org. Windows tips and how to fix Windows 10 updates when 1709 fails to install. Now I'm going to hold down the control key, click enter, and when you can't get these updates, this is pretty standard stuff, but if you get these issues, if you had an error code, this should help you to define what you're dealing with. Did you get an error code when it wouldn't? Okay, if you didn't get an error code and it just wouldn't work, my first solution would be to wait, because again, like Joe said, it's those drivers. But if you did get an error code, this is something you can look at here, and it's good to have this for reference. How to fix. Update to 10 version 1709 failed to install. Now this talks about uninstalling your antivirus or security program, disconnecting the USB devices. It's funny talking about USB devices, because this machine we're looking at right now, since I have put build 1709, I keep getting a little comment down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen randomly about the last USB device I connected is having problems connecting. Well, I've only got 2 USB devices connected. It's a keyboard and a mouse. So whatever other device they're talking about, I'm hoping that'll go away, but that's something that's occurred since build 1709 installed. It did it to me last night, and it did it to me again just a while ago on this machine after I had turned it on. So if that's part of the problem, they talk about delete the Windows Update folder, download and install the Windows 10 manually. Method number 3, repair the system files with SFC. System File Checker. You guys ever had System File Checker work for you? Yeah, it's been hit or miss for me too. If you got a problem, System File Checker is what you're resorting to, then you got other issues to deal with. Fix Windows corruption errors with a DISM tool. Good luck with that. Prevent the installation of the Windows 10 update. Yeah, good luck with that too. The update folder, that's a possibility. If the data store is corrupted, then you're going to have to do a dog and pony show. But what I would offer right now is, like Joe said, wait, give it some time. It's interesting what I'm hearing. Let's go back to number 2. Okay. What I'm hearing from a lot of, or what I'm seeing and reading from a lot of people is that if you're having trouble getting it installed, that's one place to go to. But what people are forgetting is, like Joe said, historically, it's been that since day one with Windows. It's been a driver issue, and if it's not installing, they're doing you a favor. What I find interesting in, here you guys have 2 older machines, and you're trying to get 1709. Microsoft is pushing it to you. I have newer machines last night that have 1703, and all they did was update 1703 last night. They're still not getting 1709. So I'm thinking, what kind of driver issues am I going to have? And I mention this now because this machine right here that has this USB issue that keeps popping up, this is a Ryzen machine. There's a problem with the Threadripper machines trying to get Windows on a USB stick installed. I've even read where people have installed it on another machine to an M.2 drive, pulled it out of the other machine, and then put it in the Threadripper machine. So there's something going on with the drivers that Microsoft is having trouble with. Now, with a Threadripper machine, it sounds like it's either USB or it may be something with a network driver or a wireless network driver that's causing issues. I haven't done a Threadripper yet. I'm still waiting for some BIOS updates because of some of those issues. But for your machine, if it's not letting you install it, then just wait. If, let's see, this is, I'd say 30 days. If in 30 days you're still having a problem, if you can do a screen capture, if not, then I would say if Joe and I could see the machine, then maybe we can help you work through it. Because what we might do is download that puppy on the USB stick and force it. And if you want to go ahead, that's what I'd say do. But be prepared. Could be drivers. Joe?
I upgraded a laptop last night, one of my daughter's laptops. It's a 2010 machine.
Yes.
and of course I'm past the freebie time, so to speak.
Yes.
But I went up to do it anyway on freebies, and it installed. It took a long time, but it finally got installed. It installed 1703, and then I went to check the page where it's to find out whether or not it was registered.
Yes.
It said register this machine, so I registered it, tried to. It said you can't register this machine.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It said it didn't meet some of the standards. So I had a choice. They either leave it there and try it, or go back to 7, which, as you know, if you wait over 7 days, you can't automatically just go back.
Interesting.
So I went back.
That was a pickle. Wouldn't let you register it.
Nope.
Over the past week, I was able to get updated.
Yes.
And didn't really have any problem, except I kept giving it a start date, I mean a time to install, like at 8 p.m. in the evening, and the computer would be off, or not off, but I guess in hibernate, and it wouldn't update. So I don't know why. I didn't turn the computer off. I just must have it in a power options that turns it off.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw that on a computer one time. Microsoft is trying to update. You got your power mode set. You would think Microsoft would come in and say, okay, if we're going to update a machine, we're going to change the power profile while we're at it so that we can do that.
That's right.
Because the power profile takes precedence.
Apparently it did not. So
Yeah.
I finally got it to update during the day, and I'm not sure how long it took, maybe 3 or 4 hours, but it really wasn't bad, and I so far haven't had any trouble with it.
Did you change the power profile?
No.
You just kept it alive?
Yeah, I just did it at a time when I knew I was not going to be using the computer.
And it'd be up. Okay. That's
Yeah.
an important thing to remember. Change the power profile if this rascal's trying to be downloaded. Otherwise, the power profile takes precedence, and it will shut things down. That's you know, a progression of things that's just so annoying. Okay, so we've talked about a workstation class video card. We've talked about Windows Build 1709, what to do when you've got a problem with it. We've talked about the new FireFox, and we've talked about the FireFox scam to be aware of. So I'm going to go back over here to Build or Buy, to our talking points, and Robert Collier sent us some information about a new browser. Where's Robert? Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. Okay. Let's get a mic over there for Robert so we can hear what. You haven't tried it yet? I was going to ask you what you thought of it. Oh, you're good. Mike's coming your way. I used to always get this stuff about Kim Commando from Milt, but since we don't have Milt, we have to rely on other people now for stuff about Kim Commando. So you found this browser, but you haven't tried it. Has anybody tried Vivaldi? You've tried it? Yeah. What'd you think of it? Can we get a mic back over there, please? Sorry, Robert. Anybody ever ask Robert if he goes walking? He says yes every Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a nice browser. It's fast, has some nice features, but you know, it just doesn't have all the extensions and everything that I'm accustomed to use in Chrome. So
it's pretty lean.
Yes, well, it's not as full-fledged as Firefox or Chrome, as far as extensions, but otherwise, it's a very fast, nice browser and.
Takes a small footprint?
Small footprint, yes.
Well, I was getting a little put out with Chrome, and that's when I went to Chrome because I was getting put out with Firefox. I got put out with Chrome, now I'm back to Firefox. So I'm always looking for something that's going to run fast, that's not going to bog down the machine and be a resource hog. So I'm glad to know about it. I haven't tried it, haven't had a chance to look at it. Been too many things going on. So I've got a link up here on Build or Buy. Let's go over to that computer, which would be number 3. You're not leaving me a backup shot. Thank you. You still haven't left me a backup shot. Yes? You can't switch.
Her space bar is not working.
Your space bar is not working? Really? Interesting. Well, let's see. Space bar works there for me. I'm glad you mentioned that. Let me see. Give me just a second while we look at this. So we're having trouble getting the backup shot. So when we try to use the space bar, wow. Well, I'm telling you. I hadn't noticed that on this laptop. Has it been working in the past? Yeah. So why is it not working now?
We didn't know whether it was something to do with having a split screen up there.
It shouldn't have anything to do with the split screen. But it doesn't like your space bar for some reason. Something we didn't do right. Yeah, we have to have a bigger hammer. So what we have to do is plug another keyboard into your laptop. That's interesting. That's an Asus Zen before you had access to the space bar to change the screens like I'm doing, but you don't have access now. Okay, so you have to hunt and peck. Well, if you can throw up the backup shot, I'll flip it over. So I'm going to go back over here to this one right now, flip it over. Okay, so let's go back over to talking points. Like I said, I've got a couple links up here from Robert about Kim Commando and that Vivaldi browser. Extreme Technology, talking point number 18, is coming out with a new video memory, 16 gigabit GDDR6 memory, 2 gig capacities. So new video cards, new memory. That's probably going to be my guess, since it's GDDR on an NVIDIA chipset, because remember, that's a different memory that's being used by AMD for their video cards. And talking about video cards, I've got a link up in here about from PC World. Intel and AMD team up. A future core chip will have Radeon graphics inside. Intel has not really had great graphics. And I guess the last time Intel and AMD did anything was probably the 486s. When AMD was making a pin-compatible chip. And that's when we had the DX4100s. That was a smoking motherboard, smoking chip. Then we went to the P500s. That's when Intel went to that stupid card thing on a slot. And then we've been separate ever since. So for the fact that they're going to be working together, I find that interesting. And I've got some links up in here about some other things they're going to be doing, all graphics related. For example, one of the gentlemen that worked at AMD, Wonder Video, is now going to be working at Intel. So that's going to be interesting. Now let's see, is Pat here today? Pat didn't make it. Pat was going to send me some information last week about what's going on with AT&T. So I think I was talking to Greg about it earlier. How many of you here have AT&T? Okay, so y'all seen the stuff with AT&T and Yahoo and Verizon. You've seen all that's going on. Pat made the comment last week that you were going to lose your AT&T email addresses. I haven't seen anything about that. What I have seen is because of AT&T and Yahoo, and this to me is a little confusing, and I'll show you a link up on AT&T's tech documents that we can go in and look at. As of December, I think the 2nd of this year, all your AT&T stuff, when you log into Yahoo, it will work until then. When you log into Yahoo, anything you've got in Yahoo, you're going to have to create a separate Yahoo ID. Because after that time around the 1st or 2nd of December, after that time, your AT&T will not be able to access those Yahoo accounts. They're separating them. Now, with that said, Yahoo is getting bought by Verizon, but Yahoo and AT&T are still doing a deal where Yahoo is going to manage AT&T email. So, and it looks like, what is it, Verizon and AT&T may come together? It's just bizarre. Right here on talking point number 12, I'm going to go over to that screen. AT&T.com email support changes to Yahoo access for AT&T customers. As of December the 7th, you will no longer be able to use your AT&T email address to sign in to most Yahoo websites and apps. That link works right now. There have been some others that didn't. Here's one from Android Headlines. AT&T emails can no longer be used to log into Yahoo. And also AT&T, they're coming up with a new look. New AT&T is on its way, so you can read all about that. And I think I've got a couple of other links in here about AT&T, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Now then, for those that are interested in audio, Magix not only has Vegas Video, Magix took over all the stuff from Sony, which came from the previous company. But SoundForge, their full-blown audio program, has a lower scale program called Audio Studio 12. Audio Media International has a review about the SoundForge Audio Studio 12. It's got some new features in it that look interesting. Those new features are not in the full-blown SoundForge, but I expect it with the next update. But I wanted to share that with you. Now, something else that came up, and where is John Lum? I want to get a mic on John. Last week, John, you had some information about supercomputing, and we didn't get to share with it because we had an audio problem. And I find it quite interesting what you shared. There's a link up on Builder from last week, but I got some other stuff this week about supercomputing, and I think it's kind of fascinating. What made you find and bring and share that particular link about supercomputing last week that we didn't get to? Do you remember it?
Just a minute, I can find it here.
Yeah, I should have given you a heads up. Sorry. Let me go to Builder from last week, and I'll see if I can find it too. That would have been on the 8th, and that would have been I didn't get the link up, so I had that in email from you. I thought I had that up. No, we didn't get to it last week. You sent that to me in email.
I could remember the name of it.
It was a strange name. It was a real interesting site talking about that. Was that the one in Japan? Or was that the one in Germany?
Italy.
Oh, that was in Italy.
No,
Oh,
that was in Spain, Barcelona.
oh yes. Okay. Let's get the mic back over there on you.
I have a mic. I just had my hands full.
Gotcha. Blonde or brunette? Sorry.
Mac looks something Mac. No.
It was a strange name.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I found it fascinating, and in this link that I've got that I'll put up here, there was a top 500 that was talked about. Network world. Supercomputing is becoming super efficient. The top 500 list. And I've got another link up here on some supercomputers up here. Tom's Hardware. NVIDIA is building its own AI supercomputer. And also on Tom's Hardware, talking point number 3, China beats the US on the fastest supercomputer list. I just think it's interesting that we're seeing stuff about supercomputers coming up in the news. If you find that link and you think of it, I thought I had it bookmarked, but I didn't. And I thought I had it up on Builder Buy from last week, but I didn't.
I've got the email that I sent to you.
If you find it.
The Google M-A-R-E-N, like, or Mare, M-A-R-E, sorry, and then N-O-S-T-R-U-M, Mare Nostrum. You got it.
Mare Nostrum is the name of the main supercomputer in the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. Most powerful supercomputer in Spain, one of 13 supercomputers in the Spanish supercomputing world. Top 500, June the 13th. 1.3 megawatts, operating on SUSE Linux. Storage, 14 petabytes. A main cluster of Intel Xeon Platinum based, and 3 small clusters of emerging technologies.
And the unique thing about it is built inside some 400-year-old church.
That looked
like that in Barcelona.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. I thought that was fascinating because that means they had to come in and do the floor and everything. And the air conditioning they had to put in for it. Mare Nostrum. Now, this is not the link you sent to me. I think you sent me a link straight into the university that works with that device. In fact, it may have been BSC. This looks like it. Barcelona Supercomputer Center. It's interesting, for a supercomputer, they need a better internet connection. Wow. That is not coming up. Okay, well, anyway, there's a link to it. It's the Marstrom. You can read about it. What brought it to your attention?
I don't remember where I stumbled across it. I was just browsing through the internet, and something I caught my eye. It said the most beautiful supercomputer or something like that.
Interesting.
And I thought usually beauty is not a priority in supercomputers. I wonder what they're talking about. So
unless you talk about its power as being beautiful, and that's a pretty beautiful thing.
Yeah, I wish I could find the site I was originally, because they had diagrams of how they put the whole thing together. You know, all the breaking down each one of these little, what they call nodes.
Yes, I found that fascinating. I agree.
All the what is in each one of those nodes, and how many thousand of them there are connected in this one computer.
And they're constantly upgrading those computers.
Yeah.
To add processing power. And then it talks about what they do for that, or what they use that for, and how you can get access to be able to use that if you're in that world. I found it fascinating. Okay, I'm going to move on to
Gil.
Yes, sir. Yes, Ben.
Just go back to your AT&T email again.
Yes, sir.
I don't understand what you're saying, because let me explain to you what happened to me.
Yes.
I had AT&T email since 1995.
It'll still work.
And Yahoo was not in the picture then. Yahoo came into the picture later, so I shouldn't be affected at all, should I?
You'll still have your email address, and it will still work. Do you access any Yahoo sites?
Do I don't know. I just do my email. I just go to my email. If I go to Yahoo sites, I don't know about it.
If you go to Yahoo sites, or you have anything Yahoo you do, those Yahoo accounts, when you access them, are going to be separated, and you're going to have to create a separate Yahoo address. But as long as you're just doing email, you will not be affected.
Yeah, I'm just doing email. Okay, thank you.
You'll be good. I'm glad you asked for that clarification, because like I said, what Pat said last week had me concerned.
Yeah,
And she
me
thought
too.
it was a virus.
Yeah.
I said, send it to me. She didn't. I wanted to read it
Yeah.
because there's so many scams we need to know. But based on what research I've done, because I also have an AT&T account, we'll be okay. It's funny as you look at this when
Thank
we
you.
when we did this when we started. It's a great question because when we started with AT&T, we were dial-up. Then we went to DSL probably around 99. And when we went from DSL, then we graduated through those levels until they finally went to ADSL. When that started and they were not involved with Yahoo, Yahoo was a big deal a long time ago. And it was not uncommon that when you looked at videos, you looked at videos on Yahoo because places like YouTube didn't exist. And if you were going to look at a music video or any kind of video, you went to Yahoo. So I could understand that back then, and I'm saying that because I used to have places on Yahoo I went that I haven't been to in a coon's age. But it makes me think and takes me back. Which brings me to another point. I don't understand why AT&T ever got involved with Yahoo, and I understand less because there's a link up here on Verizon, why Verizon wanted to buy Yahoo. Verizon also bought AOL. Now, AOL was the last BBS on the internet. Y'all remember that? Mm-hmm. Why the dickens did they want to buy AOL? And why the dickens did they want to buy Yahoo? Yahoo was a very valuable property at one time, but now it's relevant. And when Yahoo first got involved with AT&T, it screwed up AT&T. All kinds of problems. It was like, who do you talk to? Everything was like back and forth. So I'm glad you asked that question. AT&T email, you'll be fine. Takes you back, makes you think. Now, here we all working with Windows Build 1709. We don't all have it yet. Some of us have it, some of us don't. Some of us are trying to get it. Some of us are trying to avoid it. The talk is already now going down the pike about the next one, which is called Build 17035. Yeah, they're logical. Numbers make a lot of sense. If you're interested in the Build 17035, the Windows blog, talking point number 5, it's the Windows Insider program. Anybody here on the fast track? Jack, are you on the fast track? No. Somebody was. Joe, you were at one time. Yep. You got off of it, didn't you?
I got off of it for this thing, but
you got it still at home? Have you had 17035 come down yet?
No.
Interesting. Well, it's the next thing coming down, and it's the Windows 10 Insider Preview Build, 17035. It was posted on 11/8. I put this up on 11/14, which was yesterday, because today is 11/15. If you want to know about it, there's some stuff. Now, we had some other information about a new SSD. Now, first of all, SSDs are the way to go with a computer. If you get a chance to use an M.2, that's probably the way to go. It's like a stick of chewing gum. Love it. Capacity is great. So far, the best performance has been with the Samsung for price, performance, warranty, and all that. Well, there may be a new, I don't know if you want to call it bang for the buck, but pretty close to it, which matches price and performance, one that I have not seen before. If I did, I didn't pay any attention to it. There's an article up on Tom's, and this is talking point number 1, Tom's Hardware, My Digital SSD. You guys ever heard of it? I'm not familiar with it either. My Digital SSD, first to retail, the new, how do you pronounce that, Phison or Scion? Phison? Is that how you pronounce it?
Where?
P-H-I-S-O-N?
Scion.
Scion? Is that Scion, Joe?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. To retail the Scion E8 NVMe SSD. Now, there's an article that was posted 11/13. I put it up 11/14. And then I went looking on Newegg and found it, and there is a drive of 480 gig, which is a 512, with this new configuration. It's an M.2 PCI Express 3.0 by 4, and it's an NVMe. I'm going to hold down the control key and bring that page up. $200. $200 for that drive, using that Scion E7 controller. It's an NVMe, and it's got the single notch. Let's bring a close-up here on that. So it's an NVMe drive, so you get the speed and you get the capacity, and the warranty's not too bad. I believe this has a 3-year warranty on it. And this drive is shipped and sold by My Digital Discount. Now, if you go to the link we've got on Build or Buy that takes you into Tom's, Tom's will take you into a link that takes you straight to My Digital. But the link I've got up as a secondary link, which is talking point number 2, is into Newegg, where you can find that drive for $200. $200, not bad. Not bad at all. And they, good question. What's the read and the write speed? Maximum read, 2.6 gigabytes. Maximum write, 1.3 gigabytes, which would translate out to 2,600 megabytes versus 1,300. And that would compare with, I think the Samsung is like 1,500 megabytes. So for the price, that's not bad. And I've seen some people talking about, for some reasons, whatever, not working on some motherboards. Don't know why. It's a new controller. If it's not working on a motherboard, it might require a BIOS update on the motherboard. Pin compatible. It's an NVMe drive. It ought to work on any of them. PCI Express Generation 3. And it talks about the Scion controller. I've never used the brand. I've never heard of it. But I'm curious enough to try it. I'm also curious if it runs hot. I'm only aware of one I'm only aware of one NVMe drive that runs hot. And I've never had a problem with the Samsung or a couple other brands I've tried. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you. My Digital, NVMe. There's a link to it. So let's see some other points I wanted to talk to you about. HP is coming out with a new laptop. This is an AMD Ryzen 5. And that reminds me, I told you last week about Costco and the deal at Costco a couple of weeks ago. The Ryzen, the HP Ryzen 17, I think it was a 1700, is back at Costco, not online, but it's in the store. I saw a 5 sitting on a shelf for $600. So if someone's contemplating building a computer and would rather just buy one, the HP Ryzen 1700 for $600, I think is a deal. Because there are 3 or 4 other Ryzen models at Costco they want like $1,000, $1,200 for. And the deal on the monitor is still there, but before you run out and go buy a 32-inch monitor, LG also has a 32-inch monitor for $10 more at B&H. And if I'm looking at a Dell monitor versus the LG monitor, I'd lean toward the LG. So I'm throwing that out there. But if somebody wants to go buy a computer, in fact, let me go over here to Costco right quick and I'll show you. Costco, Ryzen, Costco HP Ryzen. Here we are, AMD Ryzen 7 desktops. And that's the one for $600, HP Performance Pavilion. AMD Ryzen 7 with 4 gig of graphics. And it's got a burner in it. It says this product is back ordered and expected to ship between 2 to 3 weeks. I've seen them in the stores. And the Costco out by us, they had 6 in stock on the shelf. For $600, you can take it for what it is and upgrade it to whatever you want it to be. But I think for most people, it'll probably do what they need, bang for the buck. 4 gig video, let's see what the specs are. 16 gigs of RAM, a 1 terabyte, 7200 RPM drive, a DVD burner. It's got Windows 10 Home. To me, that's bang for the buck. So if I were to upgrade the memory, I don't see any need to. If I were to upgrade the version of Windows, that's anywhere from maybe $35 to $150, depending on how you buy your copy of Windows Pro. If I were to upgrade the network, probably not. If I were to upgrade, say, the video, swap out the video card. So the only thing I'd probably want to do if I bought that machine would be to put Windows Pro on it, but I wouldn't have to. So it could be used as is. It's a Ryzen 7 1700. Not bad for the money. Bang for the buck. So I had to share that with you. Now, Manolo, you were looking at buying a laptop. Have you gotten very far with that? Let's get a mic over there on Manolo for just a minute. In fact, you looked really good on screen about 2 weeks ago when we were talking about laptops. I got a good picture of your cap. It's on.
No, I haven't done anything.
Oh, you didn't? Weren't you going to buy a laptop?
Yeah, still thinking about it.
What are you thinking of? What are you looking at?
But say again?
What are you looking at? What brand?
I'm not. I'm just.
You're still just breezing
back.
Well, this is a good time to be mindful that Thanksgiving is coming up next week, and the day right after Thanksgiving is when they do all these sales. So,
I saw that. I saw that.
Be watching, but be careful. That's why it's important to know your specs and kind of get some places located.
Okay.
So if you see something you like, it's going to be like Costco. If you want it.
I saw that at Costco, and I saw where they had it. I'm going to be out of town those days, and I thought, shucks, I wonder, So
Well, I used to think Costco never ran anything on sale, but they do. You just
got
to. I used to think Costco never put anything on sale, but they do.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll walk in there and there'll be something be $100, $200 off.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say sale. It's just price reduced, good till whatever.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll just
sit tight and wait and see.
Wait back and see.
Well, if you miss that Friday after Thanksgiving, then they do stuff on that Monday because they call that, I think, Black Friday, and I think they call it like Red Monday.
Okay. I'll be back Monday.
There'll be some more sales. There's always some deals going on.
Yeah.
And things are changing. That's why I mentioned this laptop that HP's come out with, and I'm going to go back over here to, let's look over here. Thank you. This HP Envy 360. This is a Ryzen 5 2500U mobile processor with Radeon Vega 8 graphics. Hold down the control key. Let's bring that link up.
What do you call it? What is it?
This is an HP Envy. HP Envy. E-N-V-Y. HP Envy. And they have several models. These all have Windows 10 Home on them, but it's Windows 10 Home 64-bit.
Yeah.
And they range anywhere from about $600 to about $1,000.
Yeah.
$1,050.
Yeah, well, that goes within my budget. I was thinking maybe $1,000. And one of the things that I was thinking about doing was getting a Windows Pro 10 Pro. It's recommended. I don't know where I saw it.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Why not?
What's it going to buy you?
Huh?
What's it going to do for you?
Well, I thought it'd be faster, better, and.
Well, now to answer that and give you the 2 cents, my 2 cents worth, Joe and I benefit from using Windows Pro.
Okay.
Just because we use it and we recommend it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to benefit you. A lot of things we talk about with Windows Pro are easier done on Windows Pro than they are the Windows Home version.
Yeah.
But you'll get the performance you need. They'll perform the same.
Okay. Okay.
So I personally, that's one of the things I look for in a laptop. I want the Pro version.
Yeah.
And if that's one thing lacking, I know I can upgrade it. But if I buy a laptop, personally, I want that on there. But if it's not on there, it's not a deal breaker.
Okay.
So unless you need those benefits, for example, like you need to use the policy editor.
Need to use what now?
The Windows policy editor.
Okay.
If you needed to use the Windows policy editor, you know something you'd benefit from? You need to go to Costco and see about some hearing aids. I'm serious.
Okay.
Mom got some hearing aids at Costco, and they're great.
Okay.
And those Costco hearing aids are bang for the buck.
Okay.
You can talk to one of their hearing specialists. They'll ask you a few questions. They'll do a test. It's worth the money.
Okay.
Look into it. I'm serious.
Look into what? The what?
Costco hearing aids.
Yeah.
I think it would.
need to get one. Yeah.
I think it would help you.
Yeah.
Pass that over to Jack for just a second. Yes, sir.
During this discussion, I was just checking. You can buy an activation key on eBay for Windows Pro for $6.55.
That's the best I've seen yet.
A Windows Pro what? Windows 10 Pro?
Yeah, Windows 10 Pro.
Windows 10 Pro 64-bit.
64 or 32, your choice.
Same thing.
Yeah, key should be the same price. Where's it coming from? China?
England.
As long as it'll work.
UK, and they've got a legal note posted with it for whatever it's worth. It says the judgment of the German Federal Court of Justice allows the sale of OEM versions and DSP versions without the associated hardware. You purchase a product key for the software mentioned above. Windows and Office are trademark of Microsoft, yada, yada.
So it's a legitimate key. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Well,
and
legitimate in a German court.
I bought the full Office Pro suite that way for less than $10 a few weeks ago.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch. As long as it works. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, let's go back over to this talking points here about the HP Envy. This is something you might want to look at, Manolo, if you're interested in a laptop. Look at the specs. The HP Envy 360. I don't know a lot about the model, but what got my attention is because they've come out with a laptop that uses the new AMD processor, AMD quad-core FX, or an APU. They've got an Intel i5. My favorite laptop is still the Asus Zen, but the Asus Zen, Z-E-N, that's still my favorite laptop. But if I were going to buy a laptop from Asus now, it wouldn't be a Zen. It would have been back when those were available. What I would do is go to Asus's website. I'm going to go to this. I have a link, but I'm just going to do a search for Asus laptop. And here it is, Asus laptops. I think I had the link up last week. What they're pushing right now, what Asus is pushing, is their ROG, which is their Republic of Gamers. That's their higher end. They've got the Asus VivoBook. They've got their Asus Chromebook. But the ROG, super slim, super powerful. And there's the ZenBook, but that's not the model that Nick Streeter got, or that Lou Warren, or that Andrew got. That model is no longer available. So talking to different people about the different models is good to look at. And if you go to Costco, do you shop at Costco? Okay, most Costcos will have probably 3 of those type laptops. You'll see one from Asus, you'll see one maybe Lenovo, and you'll see one from probably Dell. Look at those 3 and compare the specs and see what looks best for you for the money. They'll have a table where they have it all around, but the separate where the pallets are, that's where the good stuff is. The higher performance stuff. The reason I say higher performance is if you're going to do some of the things we're talking about, like editing audio or editing video, that kind of computer is beneficial. If all you're going to do is email, then something less expensive will do what you want. You can always consider what you're going to use it for and make sure you get bang for the buck, because this stuff is changing so fast. I mean, about the time we think we've got something figured out, it changes, and then we start all over. Can we get a mic back over on so we can hear you?
There is a Costco there by my house.
That'll make it easy.
Yeah, on Bunker Hill in I-10.
Bunker Hill and I-10?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll see you in there sometime. I go to the one out at Katy. It's easier for me.
Yeah, well, I live closer into the city.
Understandable. Okay, so I've been through the talking points. I've talked to you about some different laptops. I had some links here from Robert we talked about. A couple of links here from Dwayne that I didn't get to a while ago. PC World, Intel 8th generation Core i7 review, what happens when thin laptops get quad-core speed. And Dwayne sent us another one, How To Geek, the best tools to help you build your next PC. So now is a good time to be thinking about building a computer. Bang for the buck. I've showed you what I had for rendering. Did y'all find that interesting about rendering with the WX 7100? 2 kinds of rendering. Rendering animation, CAD work, or rendering video. It's all about they need to update the drivers. And as far as configuring the application, when you install the new drivers, it's automatic. There's nothing to go configure like they used to be. I'm going to leave you with one other little tool here. I've got a link up here to a workstation on Hexus, but Solo Shot. Do you guys remember me talking about that about a year or two ago? Solo Shot, the ability to have a robotic camera. There's two made right now. Solo Shot here in the US, and there's one in Europe, I think, that comes out of Italy again. Solo Shot now says that is shipping, but when you go to look at the product, it says any order placed today will ship on December the 1st. So I would love to see the product, but until you can order it and get it within 2 weeks, that's been a moving target. But I've got a link up to the technology if anybody wants to look at it. Do we have any questions today? Any questions we didn't get to last week? Did we cover the things last week we talked about in a sufficient manner? Y'all notice we got the audio working, a piece of equipment that we didn't have, because the audio is a set and forget. I forgot. That piece of equipment is back in the rack. And when we come back in 2 weeks, Joe and I will be using the new mics like you guys are using. Now, next week we're not going to be here. That's the 22nd. Then the 23rd, of course. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back on the 29th, and we'll be back here in December. So has anybody got any more questions? No questions? Folks, hope you enjoyed this today. Thanks for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day. And folks online, thanks for watching.
Hey, Joe, the history is working on...
Oh, it is now?
It is working, yes.
Good.
Joe, can you look up something for me?
Sure.
You found a video card for that desktop I got, and I looked, I couldn't find it. It's that HP.
ADM.
You found one.
Signing off, folks.
They discontinued it.
That might have been the thing, though. It might have been discontinued now.
I looked for it at that same time when I got home.